At 35,000 feet, what should have been a peaceful flight turned into a nightmare. An elderly black woman clutched her small bag of medicine, only to watch in shock as a flight attendant tossed it into the trash like it meant nothing. Murmurs spread through the cabin, confusion rising with every breath she struggled to take. No one could have guessed the man seated beside her wasn't just her son, but someone with the power to stop everything. What happens when justice takes flight? Watch until the end. Wait a second, tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Her name was Evelyn, a 72-year-old grandmother with a quiet dignity that spoke louder than words. She had spent her life teaching, raising children, and traveling only when she could save enough to see the world she once taught her students about. On this flight, she carried more than a suitcase. She carried fragile health and the daily struggle of keeping her body steady with prescribed medicine. To other passengers, she was simply another older woman in the aisle seat, adjusting her shawl, sipping water. But to her son, Marcus, seated beside her, she was everything. He had cleared his schedule, flying with her to ensure she stayed safe. To Evelyn, this was a long-awaited chance to relax. To Marcus, it was just another day ensuring his mother's dignity was protected. Neither of them could have predicted that within minutes their quiet world would be torn apart. The trouble began subtly. A flight attendant passed by, eyeing Evelyn with an expression that lingered just too long. When Evelyn pulled out her small pouch of pills, the attendant's tone turned sharp, accusing her of breaking rules. Evelyn tried to explain these weren't snacks or contraband, but prescribed medication she needed to take mid-flight. Her voice wavered as other passengers turned to look, not out of concern but curiosity. Then, with a cold smirk, the attendant plucked the bag from Evelyn's trembling hands and dropped it into the trash. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Evelyn's chest tightened, panic rising with the reality that her lifeline was gone. She clutched her son's hand, whispering his name. Marcus's calm expression concealed the storm inside. He wanted to speak, to demand justice immediately. Still, he waited, watching the crew, watching the passengers who either looked away or shook their heads. Evelyn's breathing grew shallow. Marcus reached for the call button only to be met with dismissive gestures. "She's fine," another attendant muttered, their voice thick with irritation. "Fine?" She was gasping, her face paling. The air felt heavier, colder, charged with tension. Marcus scanned the cabin. Some passengers whispered in outrage, others remained frozen in silence, unwilling to intervene. Evelyn leaned back, eyes closing, for a moment too long, and that's when Marcus knew the line had been crossed. Marcus stood, his presence commanding instant attention. His calm mask dropped, replaced by a fury that silenced the entire cabin. "Enough!" His voice cut through the air like thunder. He reached into his jacket, pulling out credentials few had ever seen, a top-ranking aviation official with power over every airline in the country. Gasps erupted as whispers spread. This wasn't just a passenger, this was authority in its purest form. He made a single call, his words precise, firm, impossible to challenge. Within minutes, the plane's captain received instructions. The flight would not continue. The aircraft was grounded before it even reached its destination. The attendant who had mocked Evelyn now stood pale, realizing too late the weight of their actions. Justice had just boarded their flight. Evelyn's medicine was retrieved and her breathing steadied, but the wound left by humiliation lingered. For Marcus, this wasn't simply about one incident. It was about decades of quiet prejudice, where voices like his mother's were too often dismissed until it was too late. That day, the flight landed in silence, every passenger forced to witness. What happens when cruelty meets power? The airline faced consequences, including rewritten policies, job losses, and ruined reputations. Yet beyond the headlines was the more profound truth. Evelyn's story was not unique. How many more are forced to endure in silence? How many mothers, fathers, and grandparents suffer indignities unseen? Perhaps the real question is, how many more times before the world finally listens? Tell us in the comments, which city and country are you watching from? Take care.